Episode number 318 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is my dear friend, Kelly Meehan, who is a spirit baby medium. I've had her on the podcast before, and I am excited to welcome her back. She is a healing visionary, author of Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium, Everything You Need to Know About Spirit Baby Communication, a birth advocate, and a holistic mother to her sons, Rain and Forrest. Her loving support and teachings focus on spirit baby communication in conception, energetic fertility wellness, intuitive health and medical intuition, pre-birth pregnancy communication, and sacred grief support in all areas of birth loss. Kelly understands how to listen to the unseen and deeply felt world of the spirit baby. Kelly shares her newest book, Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium, Everything You Need to Know About Spirit Baby Communication. This insightful book explores Spirit Baby Communication 101, testimonials and real messages from Spirit Baby, and how to bring intuition and psychic self-awareness into your conception, pregnancy, or healing birth loss. Kelly is also the creator and host of Spirit Baby Radio podcast with over 200 episodes by the end of 2024. She has been in the media on birth-related and spiritual podcasts and radio shows as a guest expert, being invited and attending over 40 online global summits with topics such as fertility, pregnancy, grief, and spirituality. She has been featured in blogs, magazines, and articles, and has been on a TV show, Nighttime Prime, Nick Moms Sharing Her Work. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome back to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm so excited to have you back. So, first of all, congratulations on your new book.
Yay, thank you. Do you want me to tell you the title?
Yes. Tell us the title and tell us all about it. You've been on the podcast before. If you want to give us kind of like a brief background for people who are hearing you for the first time and haven't heard the podcast before, I would love for you to share your background and then also talk about your new book.
Yeah, thank you. As always, I love Michelle and her
I
work.
Love Kelly.
And yay. And I remember when you were writing your book, I was like, it was motivated me. I was like, we're kind of like near each other, but then yours came out and it was awesome. And then I'm like, wait, where's my book? And so I'm Kelly. I go by Spirit Baby Medium, Medical Intuitive, and Mentor. And I support that conception and pregnancy, birth loss in many different psychic, energetic ways. And my new book is called Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium, Everything You Need to Know About Spirit Baby Communication. And what else are we sharing?
Okay, let's talk about it all. Let's talk about, first of all, what intuition is, how you connect with it, and how you've kind of like figured out that you have that.
Yeah, I love it. I'm not going to divulge too much of this. I share a story in the beginning of the book on what brought me into the work. And it was a really fun story. And it was like, whoa, it's there. And so really, basically, I've always had extrasensory perception. I was born very different. Not only was it traumatic, I know we all have very traumatic, but sometimes in the trauma, you work harder as the infant to be in the world. And sometimes it does open up other levels of perceptions and abilities. And I didn't really fully discover that until I was a teenager. I feel like puberty is a very big time of expression. Puberty, we could even go into like moon pause, I call it menopause, like these big, shifts in our physiology, but also into our consciousness. And I just had feeling, sensing, perceptions, and it was nonstop after that until today. And I brought it, my energetic psychological background, I brought it into the energy of children and babies and supporting, again, the psychic, the energetic, the spiritual in therapeutic and loving ways. And the book has been written over a decade of my heart in the work. It's like what have I seen? What have I known? And spirit baby communication is a term, but also there's not a lot of books now, more after 2020. I feel like there's way more information. But before that, there really wasn't a lot about the before life. And I thought I've been writing the book for a long time and I go into the great mysteries because it's not like here's the secret to the before life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the afterlife of death. There's things that we feel and know because I do feel like it is inside us. There's a wisdom inside us that we are always in relationship with, and I my mission is to share that. And you just talk about intuition. It's all connected to that because we are naturally, instinctually intuitive beings, and we can bring that in any part of our lives, whether in conception, outside of conception, and it's very valuable because we're all born too. we were
Mm-hmm.
all My often joke is you were once a spirit baby being too,
I
and
love
we
that.
don't
That's great.
right. Nobody thinks about that, but
It's
like
true.
let's say someone's on a fertility journey and they're struggling. Have you ever looked at your own birth into the world? Most people would say no. I don't know. My
Right.
mom says it's good, and or she didn't like it, or I wasn't breathing, or she had birth loss before me or after me. I'm like, whoa, those are big things to the foundational formation of your reality and the consciousness of your parents in those times through loss, through struggle, through whatever, and they seep through, right? And so, yeah, remembering we were once all spirit baby beings and we come into this world and many of us, looking to deepen that connection, like where are my children? I'm ready for that next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like then, Michelle, then the lessons begin.
Yes.
There's I don't think it's ever easy. Like some people say, I guess it's all your perception of ease, right? Because having children is a huge heart commitment. It's not, just I don't think it's nonchalant. I think there's something powerful in the in between worlds that we bring life into this world, and that's something to reflect with too. It's incredible, and sometimes it takes longer for some people, and some people are still working towards it.
For sure. And I was thinking while you were talking, there's just so much we're not conscious of.
Oh
I
yeah.
think about that, like when it comes to intuition, it's just that we all have it. It's built in, it's kind of part of our working. It's part of what made us. It's that connection to why we're here. But we're so not conscious of so many things. And we're not conscious of things that can actually provide us empowerment.
I know. And I blame culture, society, and subconscious programming.
Yeah.
I have to laugh. We have to laugh sometimes because it could be very serious and there's a lot of fear. But I know me and Michelle, we talked before, is we're very optimistic, hopeful, and even beyond that for the future that people will be intact with trusting their intuition more and more. And it's a really beautiful thing because your intuition is your own. It's not my intuition.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and that's the beautiful intelligence of just being alive and having a body is that we get to use our energy and connection with it in different ways. And sometimes we need to really slow down and be in the quiet, right? Through different practices to find our way, right? Especially when it's noisy life, noisy town, or maybe noisy city, noisy even upbringing, or maybe there's old energies that are noisy as well. But intuition is to me is a basic instinct. It's just like, yeah, like there. And we do all use it all the time. Even if people feel like, oh, I don't know if I use it. I'm like, you can distrust it and ignore it, but it's still there, right?
Yeah. For sure. Without a doubt. I feel like we all remember a time where we didn't listen to it and it was something
Yes.
important. We all remember those times. We're like, I
Yes.
knew it. I knew it
Yes.
and I didn't listen. And of course, we remember it because it was such a strong lesson. We felt it and we're
I
like, oh
think
my
those
God.
are good when they happen. You know why? Because then it goes, you go, oh my gosh, like, see, like I told you so. And then you get to go, I feel like we get to stop and pause and have that awareness. And awareness is everything. And then almost to me is like creating a map of it, like a design. Like, oh, that's that connection. And let's see what happens. And then you may be, playing around with fear and intuition for a little bit to find the differences which is very natural. But once we get really clear on ourselves, which is really through embodiment practices, through really healing our old traumas and our wounds, especially with parents, mother and father energies are so big because
Mm-hmm.
we get from that, and we're like sifting through and finding where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I pride myself in my intuition. And I say that with such my own reverence because I do feel like I'm very intuitive and there's no shame in that. And I feel like, are there times where I'm unintuitive? There are times where I'm fearful,
Mm-hmm.
but not unintuitive. I'm always intuitive. But the fear, if I know myself very well, that when fear comes up, and there's sometimes, I've managed it where it's fleeting these days. But sometimes big things will come in and I'm like, oh, that sucks. I have to
Yeah.
say it. I'm going, oh, ooh, that's an unwinding. I was like, oof, this is big. And sometimes it has a lot to do with actually all the time it has to do with our past. Because
Yeah.
present time,
Right.
there's nothing wrong in the present time. And so, it's like, oh, knowing, learning the difference. And I do talk about that in my book, On a Conception Journey, pregnancy journey, healing through loss journey. But I just think basic human nature journey. You're born, you're in a body, you were a baby being. It's like, you know, we're coming into re-remembrance more than anything with it, and that's great. And again, like you were saying, like, yeah, like, oh, I've had times growing up where I could have been in bad situations, when you're like in your 20s, like, let's go
Mm-hmm.
party or do this. And then something always shifted me, and then something weird would happen. And I was like, whoa, what is that? So it also is very automatic pilot, too. Sometimes we're not getting that like loud sound. And when that happens, I go, wow, okay. I was like, wow, I'm an automatic intuitive pilot sometimes. And I love that because it just means I'm just connecting with nature and just being, right? That feels
Yeah, for
important.
sure. And also talk about connecting with your own intuition as a person who may not be used to doing that.
So, the biggest obstacle to trusting intuition is going to be your past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the environment
Like the
that you're in
memory.
creation with. Yeah, just like, because think about it. When we were little children, we were so pure and intuitive and everything was connected. But then we become a part of the world in a way where we take on our families loads and lessons, and it can even go further back, and we do sometimes have to find our way back to it and move into what was always there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think if somebody's saying, well, I'm not intuitive and I don't know what I'm doing, I'd say, are you grounded in your body even?
Mm-hmm.
And where is your body? Like, what is this vessel? And where is your own heart energy, right? There's so many different ways we can take it. And then I think that hanging out with other people of like heart, like mind is infectious. And it will change our frequency and vibration to be in those spaces. So communities, this is the
Yeah,
future
this
forward
is true.
energy. It's all about
100%.
community. Even I just presented on an energy lecture for a fertility community, and the women were just amazing because it's like they have that synergistic, connection, and they were more connected than they probably realized, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we do. We may not even realize it.
Right.
And I love that because it makes life more spontaneous, but also we're relational. We want connection.
It's true. And I feel like when you combine energies, it just multiplies the vibe.
Yes. Yes.
And when you are going through, I'm going to give you an example. I have one of my patients, and it happens sometimes where it takes a really long time for them to conceive and they
Mm.
struggle and they go through IVF and then that doesn't work. And I had one actually recently who, after a year and then some of coming to me, she finally spontaneously got pregnant. But she had connected with her spirit baby because she got these crazy signs that were insane. I'm going to eventually have her on the podcast once she gives birth because I want her to get through it and then have her come on so she could tell the story. But so I have people going through that. But like before you even get to that point, it could be so daunting. And then you're just wondering, why is this not happening? So I know for every individual, it's very unique. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that, like why sometimes it gets derailed. It eventually happens, but why it can get derailed for so long. And is that something that connects with the spirit baby's timing, or what are your thoughts on that?
There's probably a lot of different answers for that one, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody has their own connection and journey. And it is quite baffling when you're like, deepening and working, and then all of a sudden, wow, what just happened? And I think it's pretty even more profound that she actually received communication and that she
She
listened.
got crazy
Yeah, you
communication.
got to
Like
tell me when this episode comes because
some
I'm
of
so
the
curious.
stuff was like so
Wow.
insanely, like it was crazy. She'd get like bottled wine, like it was a name that she just
Yeah.
knew that it was going to be the name, and then she saw the name on TV, and then she'd get a bottle of
Yeah.
wine with that name, and it's not a typical like average
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a girl's name, and she knew it was going to be a girl based on that. And even when she got pregnant, she was like, I know it's going to be a girl. She told even the doctors, like,
Wow.
whatever, I know it's going to be a girl. And it was a
Yeah.
girl. It was just so insane and
I love
like
that. Yeah.
really amazing. But she kept seeing that before she even conceived. And she kept seeing that also when she had her failed retrievals.
Mm.
And she was going to do another retrieval. And that's when she conceived naturally, just spontaneously. But it kind of defies the odds because you're like, well, I don't have any proof right now. And I can base it on my history and say, how is this possible? How would this happen? But
This
then it
is where I'd
does.
say, yeah, this is where I'd say some things live in the realms of mysticism, right? Especially with baby. And I know I've seen stuff like this happen before where it's like the struggle, and then, pushing with intervention, and all of a sudden baby comes naturally. And I've seen this with a few different women over the years. And it's like, it blows them away and they're so confused. And everything comes down to frequency. And
Hmm.
when I use the term frequency, every single person is set and toned to a certain frequency. And we can even look at it as though we have a sound to us. And you know this because think about people that you meet and you're like, I
Yeah.
do not get along with them, or they don't
Yeah.
even see you because your frequencies are different radio stations. And there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. And babies are coming in, they are coming in more evolved. And I'm not saying that the mother or father are not evolved enough, but there's something in the energy field from the history, sometimes from ancestors in the past, that is still in clearing. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the mother or the father in a sense, but also has to do with the baby. But also, sometimes it's just one side of the lineage of the energy in the family without blaming anybody. There's a lot of parts to that. And I feel like when we can build a communication practice that feels connected, and sometimes babies will just come in as that. It's just like, I'm coming in, please listen to me. I'm going to send you signs. I'm going to like
Hmm.
throw it in your face. And some people,
Yeah.
by the way, this, some people would still ignore it, right?
Right.
It's like,
Yes.
so I suspect a lot of the women that I meet, especially over the many, many years, oftentimes miss the signs, symbols that are coming through. And they'll say something, and I'm like, oh, you literally just told me, I don't know if you realize that that is your baby communicating. You're just like, oh, whoa, really? Because we're looking for something really big, right?
Hmm.
And you can get those big signs, but you're going to have to go deep into your multidimensional self. You're going to have to really cut away this reality in a way that is going to let your own energy grow and see the very many possibilities.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if you
Key.
can't, it's okay. I have a friend who sometimes I talk to her and she's like, I don't know what you just said, right? So I'm like, yeah. I love her. And it's
I
just
can
like,
relate
but it's
though.
so
I can
honest.
relate to
Yeah.
that.
And this is the story of my life. I'm starting to get used to that because I just got into this massive rant yesterday with my husband. And he's just like looking like, okay. I was like, I know it doesn't make sense, but I was like, it's hard to put the energetic frequency vocabulary into this earth body and knowledge. It's almost like it feels a lot harder. So I know many of you that are tuning in, you are in communication more than you realize. Some will be very visual and feeling and auditory, and others it may be more dull. But what I
Mhm.
do know is that babies do hear their parents. And so even if you're in I'm communicating one-sided or through a serenade, through song, poetry, through words, through journaling, your baby hears you 100%. And the whole part of trusting that is like, I feel like babies are awakening parents to wake up to themselves, to know who they are. And so many women I see is like, especially when there's a miscarriage or later loss, right? You are literally being initiated into two worlds of energy. And
Hmm.
there's a deep healing in that. And it's not so scary. Yes, grief is just terrible and my heart goes out and we feel it, but something else is like cracking through. It's like people use the word bringing heaven to earth, right? How are we
Hmm.
going to do that? How are we bringing the death space, the heaven space, the earth space all together in a way where there's a sense of understanding, harmony, and connection? Well, we are in many different ways, and some would disagree. But, again, the energy of the baby realms, not even babies, so much more advanced, they're in communication with us all the time and we just have to be open. I say listen, but I know listen is a challenging word, but it's true. It's like full on body heart listening. How about
It's like
that?
receiving, really. That's how I see it. It's kind of like being in a receptive place where I feel like sometimes you can get really used to speaking rather than receiving. But I'm talking about the subtleties too. I think the subtleties are things that we don't often hear. And that's why I think meditation is so powerful because it gets us quiet enough to be able
Mm.
to receive, to almost kind of improve our antenna to
I
receiving
feel
something
like,
outside of
yeah,
this world.
I love that. The three things I want to say when you said that came up in my mind is like really to achieve really good kind of spirit baby fertile energy connections, conception
Hmm.
struggles is, number one is knowing yourself in meditation, but not doing it without two and three. So, two, I would say, is do you have a healer, a guide, a coach, or somebody that can actually work in love space with you? It's not just, I'm going to give you these instructions, like I'm holding energy and love and connection with you. Because the practitioners and the healers, if their frequency is more elevated, guess what? You're not going to come in their space unless your frequency wants to move into that. And the third one would be people. I feel like community, togetherness. I
Hmm.
feel like those three is like literally just the best equation for healing and being heard and moving into your psychic space. Because think about it, you meet, I know you meet many women as I do, where they feel like I'll call it right now a psychic loneliness. They
Hmm.
have these extra sensory perceptions. They feel like they're alone. What am I doing with it? I feel like it's not worth anything. And then you see the light, or at least I do in them. They just start sparking up like, oh my gosh, you see me, you hear me, you know me, I'm allowed to speak this way. And then it adds to the journey, it adds to their up leveling of their own inner frequency of co-creation really with life and where they're wanting to go and build those next parts.
Definitely. Well, I don't know if you know this. You probably know this. That I'm like, I really love Joe Dispenza's work, and I just came back from a retreat. And every time I go, I learn something new. And one of the things, the big thing that he really talks about is that we hold a frequency, our emotions hold a frequency. And so when we have certain emotions, what we typically do is we wait for the outside world, which really is our manifestation of whatever's going on inside internally. When we wait for the outside world to shift so that our inside can feel better, but it's actually the opposite. It's kind of holding a frequency that we want, or an emotion or a vibration that we want, and that will influence the outside world. And now there's a lot of science that is showing us that our thoughts and our consciousness and our controlled consciousness and kind of like lasered perspective and perception can impact matter. And they're seeing that
Mm.
with there's a show that I was watching on Gaia. I forget what it was called. I think it was like the Creative Universe or something like that, but I don't remember the exact name. And they were talking about these professors at major universities talking about quantum physics and how we are so attached to an old paradigm of reality, which is way more materialist. But that is such a small perspective, and that whenever we see something that's outside of that, a lot of times scientists will dismiss that because it doesn't fall under their perspective and what they have solidified as real. And so it becomes very dogmatic, and we're not really seeing the truth of reality. And the truth of reality does not just consist of the matter. It also consists of consciousness and the interplay between the two. And it's really fascinating. So basically, our consciousness can impact the world in which we're seeing this, that our consciousness is perceiving. And not only that, this is starting to become realized in science. So this is what's crazy about it, is you were talking about us reawakening, but it's not just within ourselves. We're actually starting to see this in the world.
And I think we're going to start seeing more. I know that there's going to be more. I call it almost like a light switch. Like some of us will be in the trenches, like waiting around, like what's happening. We always have to laugh, like what's
Yeah. They're
happening.
the
Like
people that are sleeping. When you're sleeping, you don't want to wake up. It's
yeah,
too
yeah. You're
comfortable.
like, so what's going to happen with a lot of the sleepers? There, it's going to be a light switch, and so all of a sudden, people are just going to be on. It's some of the people. It's slow. I feel like for me, it's like actually felt like an awakening at 15 years old. So I've had to go through
You
the
were one of the
trenches
first
for
early risers.
along the trenches. I think more of the awakenings came in the 1950s even, but it's like, and then it's been a journey where it's like, am I allowed to speak this way in a dense world where they're like, no, I was like not allowed to speak this way. I was very shy, quiet, kept things very inward. And of course, the as humanity keeps shifting, we have permission, right? It's like all of a sudden we're allowed to own our own connections, and we see it more and more, but it's going to be like a light switch. But I love what you just shared. That's freaking amazing, because when you said that, it made me think of like water. People are doing these experiments again where they're like yelling at water and like,
Yeah.
like
You could see the
putting this like
crystals.
really, but like not just yelling at the water, but like giving your like dark
Intention.
energy to it, and then connecting with, and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, because when you think about we're made up of so much water, right? It's
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
what is the impact on that? And you're right, there is this science spirit kind of. I always feel like they touch each other, but I still really feel they're supposed to be separate. They can intertwine with each other, and science believes that they have to prove everything, but they
Yes.
can't. It doesn't. It's silly to me, and I feel like we're evolving out of that because everybody has a different energetic perspective, but also we're in different frequencies, so we're not going to have the same things. It's like medicine. It's like
But
healing.
it is a
Yeah.
form of communication where it's going to awaken people who are very, or identify as more science-based minded, and so that it does include that group of people. And I think that
Yeah.
that's important as well, because for a while, what happened was, in this documentary, the one guy was saying that people used to believe in transcendence, and they believed in this kind of like this spiritual world, until science came along and then dismissed it. And then they said, well, that can't be
Mm.
true. And so that it kind of like took us away from that spiritual aspect, and it was kind of
Mm.
looked down upon from an educational perspective. And then now they're starting to see it. Now, of course, the idea is that when consciousness is able to impact reality, there is no way you're going to fully be able to
Mm.
dissect that. It's just not going to be possible, because it's constantly ever flowing, ever changing, as much as your
Yes.
imagination. So you can never really pin that down. However, it still gives way to somebody who's completely asleep and does not look at the spiritual aspect naturally as we do, to open up to it. So kind of like, in some weird way, I believe that it's meant to be, because it is one
Mm.
way to get everybody on the same page, and then eventually, of course, really awakened.
Yeah, you say that, I get this image of somebody wrapped up in their little blanket on the bed in their slumber.
Yes.
Like, hello, it's time to wake up. It's time to
Yes.
wake up.
Yes.
Let's
It's like
shake
bright
things
light.
up. But some things do get really shaken up, and other times I've watched a lot of people evolve,
Hmm.
and from afar and some more intimately, and it's quite fascinating because somebody that has future information at times, or medical intuition, I want to fix everybody and heal them.
Yes.
And then I have to step away and look and go,
I
it's none of
totally
my
understand
business,
you. I
right?
get
Yeah.
you. I feel the same
This is a good
way.
one. You tell yourself it's none of my business because we're not in charge of that. I think that if we are evolving in our own space, then we ripple, right? And I know you know that. It's
Yes.
like that's the piece, because I
I
had
think
to
that's the
watch it.
hardest part. of
Yeah,
doing
especially
our
with
work
family.
or being
Family is
healers.
really hard, right?
It
Family, you're
really
just
is.
like,
Yes, that's the hardest part. I think that's the biggest
ugh.
challenge is like when you know what you know and you know that it can benefit somebody and you could be like, "Here, I'll give you the key. I know exactly what you need." But you can't say that. You can't
It's
until they're
very
ready or they
painful. I've
ask
even seen that
because
with friends of friends, and I'm like, just walk away, Kelly, because you just, I'm like, I can't. It's hard. We all have different levels of suffering, but then
Mhm.
when you see people really suffering, and you're uh, yeah, it's like okay, like, and then I have to go inward to my own suffering and go, what is that? Why, what is the need? I know you want to like help that person, but they
right,
are not
exactly.
there. They don't want that. And it's like, I just have to send that with love and just like peace and not like dwell on it. Right. Cause it's like,
Yep.
that's all we can do.
100%. It's
Mm.
like you're just aware of it. It's almost like being like a neat freak or like a
Yeah.
personal organizer for a living and then going to a really messy place and you're like,
I
okay,
want
I
to
just
like,
have to
yeah,
let go of
yeah.
that right now and just let it be.
Yeah. And then ground into our own self, create our own boundary, and then just be like, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I always wonder if that's will be ongoing in my reality because of who I am. Like I just see things through a different lens, and I know that, and I accept that. And I used to
Mhm.
think it was really bad, and I used to think that something was wrong with me. And now I've moved into deeper levels of self love that I perceive things differently, and it's okay if people
Mhm.
don't understand it. It doesn't really matter. I says as long as we're
Yeah.
just connecting with love and respect and presence with each other, because we're not going to all understand our own individual journey, especially in conception. You
Yeah, for
know,
sure.
some struggle, everybody struggles in a different way. There, or
That's
even
true.
birth loss, everybody miscarries in a different way. There,
It's
yes,
true.
there's like, oh, there's ectopic, there's this, that, but the impact is going to be very unique for each person. And it is a real deep spiritual calling when there's this conception struggle or
Hmm.
there's loss. If we can just begin more to nourish it, even in the medical environments, to look at it, and I'm sure you do, from that more whole space, but also like, okay, you're a physical body, but how are you feeling in your emotions? Like
Yeah.
our emotions dictate so much of our health, you know?
Oh, yeah, big time. And I think a big part of it is really not learning how to process them or having that shut down, that aspect of it. I've known a lot of people, they go to the doctor, they miscarry in the hospital, or the doctor says, oh, just go home and go back to your life. And there's no in between. And I mean, their spouses aren't like skilled in therapy.
Yeah.
Like they don't know how to go through it either. And so it's kind of like, it's a really difficult thing because you're just like, now what? How do I process this? And part of it is really allowing yourself to digest emotions just like you do food. You need to process it so that it
Mm.
doesn't sit and stagnate and then get stored in the body.
I've had women, so speaking about miscarriage for a moment, because this is a very big topic I can get into because it's a lot of my specialty accidentally has
Hmm.
come through in my work over a decade. And what I notice is that the biggest thing when a woman goes into has a miscarriage, the first thing I want them to go into is tenderness and self compassion. And I
Yeah.
say, you don't have to think about what the next step is. There's no plans.
Hmm.
And women that don't slow down, I see they have a major traumatic energetic wounds to heal.
Hmm.
And it's okay that that may or may not happen, but it's more of like addressing, can you slow, because a woman has lost, there's pain, there's feeling. I don't want to slow down, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's even it too. And everybody says I'm okay, I'm moving forward, but then I hear, I've many times where, oh, well, my partner, especially male partner, they don't understand. I don't know if they feel anything, or sometimes they feel so wrecked inside, they don't know how to
Hmm.
deal with it. And I'm like, what is this what we're doing to the world of like, miscarriage is a birth loss. There's, even if it's the tiniest speck, there's a connection there, and the body feels the
Yeah.
separation of light. And there is no respect. And women need to intuitively, right, wake up
Hmm.
to feel like they deserve that. But when we're in grief, we're not very clear when we're in
That's
literally the,
true.
the traumatic moment of grief.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh, okay, I'm going to go,
It's true.
do this, do that. I remember my recent deaths I've had to deal with. My friend was like, well, what do you need? And I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, let me do something. I'm like, I don't know. Because I was just so in the weeping, the overwhelm, the visitation, and the healing of it. And what she did was so communal. She brought me over homemade soup and bread.
Oh,
And
love
I
that.
remember just not eating like at all because that's where I was in the beginning. And I'm just like, I guess I can try to eat. And it just lifted my spirits. I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
I need
that's really
food.
beautiful.
And just to
Yeah,
have her there and just to share some memories and feelings. And it was like, this is what we're not taught, right? It's like,
it's true.
so when there's a loss or, birth loss, infant loss, child loss, and you're not like in it, like maybe it's a friend or a family member, you have to step in. They're not going to ask you anything.
Right, that's
And
true.
I
And just
feel
really
like,
the
yeah,
presence. I think the presence is the medicine. That's the comfort.
yeah. And it's going to happen. There's going to be, loss is going to happen. But it's, again, I think addressing it. And I do have a whole chapter on miscarriage specific loss, but I also have something really cool in the book. I
Hmm.
feel like I haven't shared this enough. I keep forgetting. There are 7 QR code meditations in the book that you can
Ooh, I love
actually
that.
click and listen live. Not live, but like it has music to it, and they're made specifically through certain areas where one is pregnancy, one is conception. I have a couples one you can use. I also have for fertility, like embryonic connection, miscarriage. I even have stillbirth, which is, later loss. I even have termination. There are specific meditations made that I feel like can just help provide that heart communication and just moving forward
I
with
love
spirit
that.
baby awareness. Yeah, I love that I was like put that in there. And then it has a link too. So if you like, I can't use the QR code, there's a link and it's like literally linked to my website and you'll have it forever and you can download them. And there are some favorites people are telling me right now, like, oh, I really love this one and I do it all the time. And it's really fun to hear that because it was one of my favorite ones that I made like a long time ago. And it's interesting that people are so linked in and some are more visual feeling. It's a little bit of everything because I know we have a little, we all have different connections. And so
It's
that you
true.
get that in the book as well.
Oh my God, I love that. Well, you guys gotta check out her book. It is amazing. It is notes from a spirit baby medium, everything you need to know about spirit baby communication. It is an amazing book. I've read it myself. I got to have an insider's peek before it came out.
That's right.
And I just know Kelly comes and does her work from the heart, like fully full on from the heart and from the light. And really anything that she talks about is aligned with light. So I highly recommend you guys check out her book. I highly recommend you guys check out her. And for people actually who do want to check you out, how can they find you?
So the best way to reach me is at newearthchildren.com, or it's also spiritbabymedium.com. And my Instagram, a lot of people love connecting there, is at spiritbabymedium. And you can, yeah, check it out. And there's even a book page so you can access the book. And it's offered through Amazon. It's offered through Ingram Spark, which is global distribution, Barnes and Noble. And you can get a paperback or an ebook. And I just recently put on my website a PDF because I don't have ebooks. so
Mm-hmm.
so if you're like, oh, I want that PDF, there you go. I have everybody covered.
Perfect. And she also has an amazing podcast.
Yes, thank you. Spirit Baby Radio, which I'm coming up to 200.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Congrats and congrats
thank
on the
you.
book.
Yay.
And always amazing talking to you. And I'm so happy you got to come on today. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes, as always, Michelle, I love you. Thank you for having me. It's always fun, and I'm very excited to keep sharing the beautiful work similar to what you do, bringing in that deep level of consciousness, healing, and I know you bring spirit baby energies into your space too.
Oh,
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.